Yes, indeed. Let's do the official kickoff. So, boom! Welcome to Tokyo Tonight. This is on every Sunday night at 11 p.m. Provided I can do it, which is, it's about 45 weeks in the year probably. There's a few times it's not possible, but it's good to have all of you beautiful people here and joining me, the ones who are here live, in the comments and getting featured on the video, which I love to include. And for those of you who are watching later, you leave comments, because I still like to interact on the comments even after the video goes live. One thing, I'm just going to take away the is it the preview? Yes, I've got to take that away so I can see the comments on the screen that's in front of me where the camera is. Yes, indeed, let's get into the topics. I've gone through and put in topics from the last week, including, so one thing you might have noticed this week is I've started blogging again in the last 2 weeks. And what I've done is, Blogger has gone kind of dead. Google's kind of stopped supporting it. Even when I write something there, it's kind of a hassle to do. It's not easy to do on mobile. And I put posts up there and they wouldn't get much in the way of feedback, reactions, likes, all that sort of thing. So I saw that Facebook had upgraded its functionality for notes to make the notes functionality in Facebook a lot more bloggy, that you could put in multiple sort of graphics and stuff like that. And I thought, well, I use Facebook all the time anyway, and that's what I'd share my stuff on. So I thought, why don't I just try writing some quick blogs on Facebook. And hey, kia ora Wildfire 777. So I thought I'd write some quick blogs on there and just see if I get more reaction or compare to how it goes with Blogger. And far and away, I got way more comments, way more reactions, which frankly, that's what I do it for. I just do it for the, I have a thought that I want to share, and I want to know that the shared thought has reached people and that you have a conversation about that. And no question, the embedded thing in Facebook is much better for that. I am going to keep my blog on Hikosaemon.com. I think I'm going to use that for when I finally get organized with my music, for stuff that I do want to have permanently on the web and indexable. I don't really care so much about my blogs being so permanent or indexed by Google, because of course the Facebook content isn't indexed by Google, but at the same time, for me, it's really just about sharing the thought and getting the reactions, which that seems to be working better than Blogger, which is kind of sad at the moment. I thought really Google was going to be much more, have much more of an impact, and that Blogger would be the place to be. Turned out that wasn't. But one of the many blogs that I've written this week, and Nicholas Grapp, great to see you, was this thing about backpacks. It's funny, whenever you you make a sweeping statement like I did, that basically you can always tell a fly gene if they're the guy in a suit but we're carrying a backpack. And not that that's a bad thing, and it just means that that's just an expat who's here, not planning to live their entire lives here as a permanent resident, which is an observation in the places that I've worked. Most of the time is proven to be accurate, and it's something that has made me self-conscious about not using backpacks when I come into work. But that said, immediately I got messages back from academics, from professional translators, and people who are very embedded in Japan and very good at Japanese and who do use backpacks, and there's not such a stigma where they work, including by Durf, who suggested that he would probably defeat my Schlong test, as I call it, which is the old test of comparing Japanese ability among gaijins. And he's probably right. Yeah, it was a fun discussion, but at least where I am in Japanese sort of salaryman context, where they have to carry these crappy, uncomfortable bags for everything, and where functional backpacks like this are much more practical. But most of the Japanese don't use them, and when the foreigners who use them, they tend to use them in a utilitarian way, that they're the kind of bag that they brought over when they were coming over on the airplane or traveling, and they're trying to dual use it. They don't want to buy extra bags, or special purpose bags. They want to use multi-purpose bags, because they're not planning to put down deep roots in Japan, and there's nothing wrong with that, depending on the type of person that you are. But that's one of the things that I kind of picked up as a cue for identifying and possibly unfairly judging and categorizing gaijins. And I talk about that in this blog, and it seemed to resonate with some people, and I got kind of quite rightly called out by some other people, but it was a fun blog. So you can go check that out. I mean, it's on Facebook, but I'll make sure all my stuff on Facebook is publicly accessible, so you don't even have to log in. You don't need to be friends with me to access the content, and you can still leave a comment on it. So yeah, go and check it out anyway. It's just a kind of a Seinfeldy mini observation. Another one, I actually just listed up the blogs that I put up this week. One was, everyone's been talking about how great it's been that Japanese rugby has won 3 games, 3 of its 4 pool games, although it didn't get through to the quarterfinals. Scotland did instead. the first team ever to actually win 3 of its 4 pool games and not make it through to the quarterfinals. It's done astoundingly well for a team that was regularly given 100-point hidings by New Zealand and other top countries. That this tournament actually beat the number 2 ranked team in the world, South Africa, in its opening game, which was awesome. Although I talk a bit here about how I've always found it very frustrating that Japan's always underperformed and hasn't really been very hard on itself about underperforming, and it comes down partly to the current coach, that the change I think has happened, but it's more just one of attitude. I think the skills and ability have always been there, and that's what I talk about in this blog. And I put in some old photos of me playing rugby when I started playing rugby in Japan. There are some really good rugby players in Japan, and that is indeed me in headgear. I used to wear black headgear and black shoes. The problem was when I was watching video playbacks of the game, I wanted to see how I was playing. If I'm wearing like something that makes it look like I have black hair and black shoes, I I played in the forwards, so I couldn't tell where I was. So I switched to wearing red shoes and a red headgear so that I could see myself on the games that we recorded. But yeah, I've actually got some more. If I open this one up, you can actually see I've dug up some old photos. I didn't start playing rugby till I came to Japan. That's a photo at the top from a game I actually saw of New Zealand against Japan in Japan, where Japan played pretty well. That was, I think, my first ever game at rugby at Tokyo University on a concrete hard dirt pitch. That's a South African guy who I got to be very good friends with, who was with me there. This is a tournament in Urayasu, a tens tournament. That is me in the red headgear, illegally holding back. Well, he broke from the scrum too early, but that was kind of fun. This is how you play in Japan. In New Zealand you play on nice grass. In Japan you play on choking dust and dirt and concrete, and it's kind of harsh, but it's getting better now. They're using a lot of artificial pitches now, but this is where I was playing in the beginning, and you get more injured by the ground than you do by the other players here. But in spite of that, there are like 140,000 players here, more players in Japan than there are in New Zealand. So the red headgear, now that's me running in the background playing against, that's Tokyo Gaijin. It's another one of the Gaijin social clubs in the foreground, and I think they were probably kicking our ass in that game. This is from Sugadaira, where they do have nice grounds. I played there, and I used to play for the French team in Tokyo, France, and there's a team huddle with a cheeky Japanese team member giving a peace sign in the background. But basically, while I show some old sort of photos from dug up some old photos at the same time. I just talk about where I think Japanese rugby is and where it's going to. And someone there is saying a wee bit, and indeed that is just a wee bit. That is another expression that Canadians and New Zealanders share in common that Australians and Americans generally don't say. Another good video that went up during the week, I haven't been putting up much Japanese content, but when Comical Reina was in Japan recently, she came and said hello. And I was in the middle of a work day, and so I just came and met her basically in a park for lunch, and we just kind of recorded on her little GoPro on a selfie stick a random conversation about how we both felt we'd kind of failed a little bit at making sure that our children, respectively her children in Canada and my child in Japan, were not so good at speaking the home country language, and why that was. And it was a really cool video actually. It was about what we've heard you should be doing and what we might be doing wrong and what we have to think about in terms of raising bilingual kids. And it's not just from a perspective of raising bilingual kids. There's some pointers in there which actually go some way for people wanting to become bilingual, but particularly raising bilingual kids. Joe Hunter makes an excellent point there that Eddie was a perfect person to follow up from JK. Well, okay, so they're talking about the Japan rugby coach. JK is one of my favourite players of all time. He scored one of the greatest tries of all time against Italy in the opener of the first ever World Cup in 1987. And I'm a huge Auckland fan, so I'm a big fan of John Kerwin, but he's not a great coach. He wasn't a good coach for Italy, and I think he underperformed for Italy and Canada. Eddie Jones, however, I agree, is the guy who is the best person you could possibly get for a coach for Japan, not just because his mum is Japanese, or because he advocates a kind of a high-speed, intelligent game that kind of suits the Japanese playing style, but also because he actually knows Japanese rugby and the players, because he's been coach of the champion Japanese side Suntory for so long. And I think that John Kerwin, unfortunately, he wasn't the right guy. And he's been trying to dig out a coaching practice, but unfortunately, he didn't do well in Auckland after he finished his Japan stint, where he didn't do well, and he didn't do well in Italy either. So I feel bad for the guy. I just don't think he's cut out for coaching, if you ask me, or at least not at that level. But yeah, anyway. Anyway, very good video with Reina. I don't think we have subtitles up on it, but if you understand Japanese, it's worth watching. And then it reminds me that I actually have to go back and just watch some, or make some more Japanese videos, or find some. I mean, I just don't have the time for it at the moment, but I'd really like to go back and do that. So that's pretty cool. Oh, and indeed, that is actually, I mentioned, so I did do a blog on Facebook about that video. Based on that video, how to fail at raising half kids, and that's, as you can see, I've got the thumbnail for the video there. I mentioned the discussion about the subject that I had with Marika Lockridge, who was awesome, and because of whom I got these awesome, I love these headphones. The headphones that she's wearing in that thumbnail that she was wearing on the video, and she mentioned to me just before, she's like showing off, these are like the best headphones ever, and they're like professional headphones, but they're super cheap, but they're made by Sony. And I became obsessed with getting these headphones. They're Sony, what are they called? They're like Sony MDR 7506s, and they're not commercial. You can go to a big camera and buy them, but they're sold like in, you know, brown boxes, and they're awesome. I love them, and I bought them because of her. But also we talked about the subject of becoming bilingual and raising half kids and so on, and the struggles that cultural struggles that half kids go through. And we talked about that, and so and raising half kids with her as a half kid herself. So I talked about that in the blog, and talked a little bit about some features and some anecdotes of Baye McNeil in Loco in Yokohama, where he talks about teaching half kids in an all Japanese school, and the struggles that some of the international parents have with regards to having these kids grow up in a mostly Japanese environment. And I feature our video. So yeah, I kind of summarised my thoughts on that. So this is kind of like, Facebook is a much easier medium to use for like writing down thoughts. And hey, Lacey's here. Good to see Lacey is here. And Brainium, that's awesome. Good to see all of you guys joining. So yeah, I'm enjoying being able to, you know, kind of write down ideas and share them that I can't necessarily always cram into these videos the way that I'd like to do. Obviously, if I was back to being not necessarily even single, but childless, you still have infinitely more time even when you're married, if you have no child. But yeah, this is kind of nice. I can in the gaps, you know, in the commute, I can just write on my mobile phone some of these things, or I can map out the ideas and do them up at night without much trouble. And I love that people comment back, and so, you know, and this is just as another reminder to everybody. My Facebook account is facebook.com/Hikosaemon, and everything I do on it is public anyway. But it is there just because I think Facebook is a great forum for, you know, interacting, and I you know, I share a lot of stuff on there, not as much as my Twitter, so it's not gonna, you know, be noisy or anything like that. But I really do appreciate the conversations that I get out of these posts. Another one down the bottom, I've been getting a real kick on. This is something I am going to talk about a bit later on in this video as well. But I was actually you know, on running machines at a local machine gym, one of these 24-hour machine gyms from Australia, just opened up one around the corner from me recently, so I joined because I'm fat, I'm trying to lose weight again, and I was running on there, and I was listening to kind of random music on my iPhone, and it started playing songs from my SoundCloud that I made myself. And it's kind of funny because I used to DJ. I used to, like, when I was running, I'd think of the right BPM of music that's the right BPM for running, which drum and bass music, which I used to DJ, is actually pretty good for it. So like, you can almost imagine yourself dancing when you're running. And I'd imagine myself mixing and playing sets, you know, when I was running. It was kind of distracting for the brain and fun. And if I felt like I was dancing, it would help me, you know, it would give me a boost. And I'd always get a little bit of a kick out of, you know, in my head kind of imagining, you know, playing in a club while I was running. While I was on this machine, all of a sudden my own drum and bass tracks started coming up, which was kind of a first for me to have that while I was running. And all of a sudden I started like a kind of daydreaming while I was running, that I was kind of in a concert of my own, which I found extremely motivating. Actually, even when I got to my goal of like running 6Ks and taking 40 minutes and 550 calories, I kept running just for another 20 minutes just because I was enjoying it, imagining dancing to my own music and performing. So it was kind of like, that was an awesome discovery, and as a result I've gone and it's motivated me to go and make more music and to arrange some playlists around that. So that was kind of fun. I talk about that experience in that blog down there, and that was pretty cool. You guys know that I'm a big fan of PDR Kabushiki Kaisha, the YouTube channel. And that dude is currently on, well, as of like 4 days ago, was on 499,901. He is like this close to getting to 500,000 subscribers, which means that PDR, his channel's taken a long time to grow. He's put so much effort into it. I mean, him and May, they're obviously making videos together, and he puts a lot of videos up regularly. His videos are, I think, I've said this before, I think they are the best videos that come out of the Japan video making community, actually, Japanese and foreign, for me. And it's awesome. I think he is probably number one, at least out of the J vlog. Yeah, well, I would consider him a J vlogger anyway, although that's obviously not, most of his audience isn't necessarily J vloggers, but I consider him at least in the realms of our community. And if you think about the biggest channels like Charla and Rachel and Jun and so on, I don't think, Meg and I would also kind of count as being on the edge of the community. He comes to the parties and stuff like that, and he knows us. He's bigger, of course, but this is an awesome achievement. I hope. I don't know. Does anyone know if he's actually already made it to 500,000? I'm sure he's going to get there any day now. Nicholas Rapp. 071 Behave, Nicholas Rapp. Well, that's part of the daydream, but I've actually, for years, that's kind of been something I've always really wanted to do, and I've actually, who knows, we've started to, PDR. So I've started a little group I'm going to talk about in a minute, but it would be pretty cool to work towards something like that, even though I don't know necessarily like a concert, but just getting to play live at a music-oriented event would be kind of cool, but I'd have to get my game up a lot from where it is, obviously. So some other topics that I found interesting this week. And that's exactly right, Gilfriend. I think he's got he's got a very kind of sarcastic English style of humor that he portrays in Japanese and makes it very accessible to a Japanese audience. And he uses humor that I miss and I don't often find in Japanese. And the fact is, he's a huge hit. Oh, there we go, Gabe B. He's at 502,000, so he's hit the mark, which is just that's a huge milestone, and congratulations to him. It's pretty awesome. 502,000 subscribers. Damn. PD's 873,000 subscribers. Okay, well maybe Milchman, you've got a different display. I don't know, but anyway, it's awesome. It's an awesome achievement for him, and I think he fully deserves it. So going into some other random stuff which I just found interesting this week, there's been a bit of discussion about self-driving cars and the whole thing about how Volvo has kind of said to the American car companies, which are worried about completely autonomous cars, because sooner or later they're going to have some sort of a crash, and in America they're getting sued for like a $1 trillion. It's going to be like the hot coffee case or whatever. Someone's going to spill a coffee inside an automotive, an autonomous car, and the company's going to get put out of business. And Volvo's rightly said, well, you shouldn't be even looking at autonomous car technology if you're not willing to take the liability for it. Which is Volvo is very far ahead in terms of the automated safety technology and the elements which I think will make it work. I've talked about this before. I really think that automated cars are really going to change society in a way that I'm really looking forward to. I am looking forward to getting into a carriage, like an old-fashioned horse and carriage, that you would just go in and comfortably sit down, or maybe you'd make it as maybe you lie down and have a bed in there. Maybe you would have an office set up there. Maybe you would just go in there and study or watch TV or watch the internet. And you just spend a few hours in this, room while it takes you to maybe Osaka, and it would take longer to get there, but then by airplane or by train. But you will leave and arrive at exactly the destination you want to be, and the time loss you'll be able to spend at leisure within the carriage. I can't wait for this technology to happen. I mean, the idea of the whole strain of driving to and from the beach to go surfing, in Tokyo, the idea that I could just wake up 4:30 in the morning at the beach. The idea that I could wake up in the morning in Osaka and just spend a day without even having to consciously go through the whole catching the train business. I can't wait for this to happen. And the Olympics are one of the factors that are pushing it. That Japanese car companies, Toyota said that they want to have autonomous cars on the road by 2020. And Gabe B, by the way, I do like driving a lot. I come from New Zealand, and New Zealand's a great car for driving. But if you've ever been in a full-on traffic jam, and this is another thing, I think when I really became a convert to the idea of automatic cars, automatic gearboxes, And the idea of automated cars was my first ever like serious traffic jam in Japan. Like they can be like 50 miles, like 70, 80 kilometers sometimes. You can get stuck in them for hours. I've got like pulled muscles from having my foot above the clutch on these traffic jams for hours. And I always thought, if these cars were like intelligent and automated, it could just run like a train, rather than have one car move, then one car move, then one car move. You could just have them all move at the same time. And even within the traffic jams, it's so frustrating when you have human drivers, how I'm sure it adds to the inefficiency of traffic jams, and how if you could automate it, you could make them like carriages in a train on the highways or something like that. So as much as I love driving, and I'm sure there will still be a place for driving, I'm a big fan. I can't wait for automated driving technology to come out. I'm really impressed with what Tesla's doing around this as well. So yeah, I am. I'm looking. I can't wait for this. I think this, and as I've said before, I think this is really going to significantly change society. I think as much as the actual invention of the car itself changed societies, I think the invention of automated cars is going to change the way that cars are designed. They're going to stop being cabins like fighter jets focused around the driver and the instrumentation, everything for the driver, and they're going to become spaces, mobile spaces. They're basically going to be like robots that you're just going to get into and make yourself as comfortable as possible and get taken from one place to another. And I'm looking forward to that. So that's why I like that topic. Shane, a lot of people have noticed, started to notice every Friday. I've started I'm just taking random sort of video where I go using some hyperlapse stuff or using some super slow motion stuff from my iPhone or whatever, and just using that to showcase some of the music from my SoundCloud that I've been making and uploading, including at the end of the show. I've been putting it onto videos and putting them up on Fridays, just some Friday sort of chill out music. Shangri-La went over really well. I was really happy with the reaction, and obviously I can tell from looking at my SoundCloud it's probably reaching more people this way than it is just having it on SoundCloud. As you know, all my stuff on SoundCloud is downloadable. It's all licensed it's all made by me. It's original, and it's licensed to be freely reused, even on monetized videos. It's there for you guys to use, to go through if you can find anything that you like or you think would go well on a video, either as background music or anything like that. But there again, there is a problem now. I've made so much stuff on there that I do have to organize it and make it a little bit more accessible. I admit that. And there's another thing, that there are some people here in the comments today, including Chitomo Wakaran, Nonbiristo, and there's Fogheart is another person. And indeed, I think Ben Duncan's there as well, who make music. And they also, the same way that I do, they make music in ways that it's available for other people. So I actually created kind of a new SoundCloud channel, and I'm playing around with the idea of setting up a kind of a collective, kind of a music creating collective. The idea being that we could perhaps help each other to create like a something like an album, something that we could put together in a way that's got out what we agree are the other people's best tracks as a guide to make the music more accessible for you guys. Plus, I get a real kick out of people using my music, but at the same time, you should know about Nonbiristo's music and Chitomo Wakaran's music and Ben Duncan's music, because they make awesome music and they do stuff I listen to and I'm like, how did you do that? And for me, coming back to the point before about always wanting to do a concert or something like that, the idea of collaborating and getting a bit better at it by working with some other people and sharing stuff so that you guys can use music and find sources of music that are from people within this community who want to help you get good music to make your videos better. And maybe one day that'll all come together into something bigger. But at the moment, it's just a matter of pulling together people who are sort of like-minded and getting some sources of music together, which I'm very happy to do. And this was a really good track, actually. I was really happy with this, and the video came out well, and I was very happy to see the reactions to it. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to release another... Oh, and DJ Sunnyside Up also does pretty cool remixes. The only thing, is that the music has to be... so that it will not trigger DMCA searches. You can't really do sampling and remixes on the stuff for what we want to do, because we want to make music for video games and YouTubers. But yeah, Sunny makes some great music as well. But no, I just want to create a central place for people to sort of at least get together, so that when you guys want to find music, you can find, of course, Incompetech, what's his name, Kevin MacLeod, or from the Clan MacLeod. And they're very, there's the YouTube key, was it YouTube, the audio library and stuff like that. There are those sources there that are there to help you guys find music that you can use on your videos. But if you could find a source of music that you knew was being made by people like yourselves, who you could reach out to, meet, and whatever, and you could mutually support, I think there's always a bit of a good karma thing around that, which yeah, I want to create. So I'm working forward on that, and I'll give more information on that. But so not just my tracks, but if you, through my stuff, I'm hoping that you'll be able to find the very awesome stuff being made by these other people that I was just talking about, and all stuff which can help you with your videos, and likewise, and you can help them get their music better, more listened to, and better known that way as well. And that's what it's all about for me. This whole thing, it's not about them making money. I don't have a dream of getting signed to a music label per se. It's just about sharing and learning and making cool stuff together. That's pretty much it for me. So yeah, that's what that is about. This is a pretty cool article about how I talked a little bit about cybercrime in Japan before, particularly the misuse of personal data and how it gets misused in Japan. This is a pretty good article which goes actually beyond what I knew about. It's actually made by Trend Micro, but basically talking about the different types of specific hacking crimes and so on that are very prevalent in Japan. It's very eye-opening, and it's worth reading. So this guy, my hero, from the thumbnail, Munemori Kawasaki. I think I said Muneyoshi for some reason. Munemori Kawasaki. I loved his. He's done 2 awesome speeches this week. The first one was this one. A post-match winning interview where he was just interviewed, and obviously he's still struggling with English, but you got to love his enthusiasm. And he came on, he's saying, here it is, just swing, just throw, just catch, don't think, everybody, just win. I love that. That's my whole YouTube motto now. There was that, and he actually just like a couple of days later, just this week, NHK was interviewing him in Japanese, and he was answering all the questions back in English in his own sort of style. And at the very end, the NHK interviewer said, look, you got a lot of fans following you back home in Japan. Could you just give us one word in Japanese for the fans back home? And he basically said something along, to paraphrase, it was longer than this, but he said basically, this is Canada, and what was he saying? This is Canada, so it's English only, okay, bro? He called the guy bro, and arigato goes, and then he said really kind of heavily accented arigato gozaimasu to he was kind of taking the piss, but it was delivered brilliantly, and the guy is now my hero. He makes me actually want to learn baseball. I mean, at least the major leagues anyway. So very good to see the Canadian Blue Jays doing that. They've got obviously a multi-talented Japanese player, and I love his philosophy, and he's my new hero. So that is pretty awesome. If you want to know how much YouTubers make, and if you're serious about it, you can make some money off this. I'm not, of course. For me, it's it's a nice little thing that I can justify for if I buy a new little compact camera or lens or something like that. But that's about it for me. But apparently, PewDiePie, he makes 14 million, or how much does he make? 12 million a year. And what's interesting about this, and where you should understand the significance of this, is when I was talking with someone in the commercial television production industry recently, who I will not name, although you may or may not be able to figure it out, he was kind of mentioning YouTubers are scaring the crap out of commercial production because there are 2 reasons. He gave the example of this, where there are some big channels out there where when they do stats on how much they are watched, like how many minutes in the week do you think you might watch, for example, the Disney Channel, or you might watch I don't know, Fox TV or one of the cable channels or whatever. What a lot of these channels find is that most people will subscribe for like one TV show, and they won't watch that channel for like more than 1 hour a week sometimes. And the numbers are actually surprisingly low. Well, they're on YouTube scale numbers, right? They're hundreds of thousands or thousands a lot of the time, and the average view span is like, less than an hour. And entire, networks and channels on TV are based on audiences that are the same or smaller than YouTube channels. And guys like PewDiePie, he was actually using the stats of my own channel to say, I'm probably actually performing both in terms of engagement. People are spending more than an hour seeing me each week. If you watch this show and you watch 2.5 Oyajis when it's going, you're seeing me probably, if you're watching them all the way through, which maybe not everybody does, but he was just kind of pointing out, I've got engagement comparable I'm doing this out of my bedroom, totally by myself, and I'm getting engagement comparable to actually what the numbers on some, big networks sort of have. And those numbers and that revenue, of course, they get pre-funded revenue from Red Avenue and stuff like that, ad revenue and so on. But that has to get divvied up between, an entire workforce of producers, of, accountants, of channel people. A guy like PewDiePie, when he's pulling in that money, that's all going to him. I mean, I'm sure it's not all going to him, but he's just kind of pointing out that people, where Hollywood and so on has been dismissive of YouTubers until now, it's been kind of outside of the system and not kind of, that significant. Actually, they've been afraid, and what's really starting to show up now is that these people are on their own bigger, not just than other famous celebrities from Hollywood, but they're actually bigger than the networks and the production studios that carry those celebrities. And that's what's really scaring the crap out of, and they don't know how to get into it. So it's kind of, from that perspective, that's where it really is causing shockwaves at the moment. The fact that a guy like PewDiePie doing what he does is he's not just outranking Charlie Sheen now for recognition and pay. In some respects, he's actually outdoing the studios that make his movies, and that is pretty cool. And if you want to know more about that sort of thing, that is why you should go and watch my recent TV series, my recent series, 6 episodes of Ace, Producer versus Geek YouTuber, which I did with my good high school friend Ace, who does commercial TV production, who may or may not be the source of the information that I just gave you. We talk about a lot of this stuff and why he, as a commercial TV producer for a couple of big networks, is so into the idea of making YouTube, and that's why he made What Really Matters, and he made it, without a crew and without, all the help. He got rid of everything, and he did this by himself, based on an idea that he had pitched and had, that never turned into a TV show, but that he really wanted to make. And he got such a buzz out of doing it, and he was telling me, you guys have no idea that, how much of a real threat you are. It was so awesome, and I've had so many really awesome conversations, and we took some of the stuff from those conversations and we put it in that series. We will be doing that again, but this is why YouTube is awesome. And look at this. So Forbes now has a list of the top earning stars. Of course, PewDiePie is number 1 at 12 million, and who else is there? I mean, Smosh and Fine Brothers get 8.5 million each. Another gamer gets 4.5 million. But it used to be $100,000 off YouTube. The ability to quit your day job and do YouTube was like the kind of holy grail that only a few people in America could do. And more, even in Japan now, there are people who are doing YouTube full time, and there are probably a couple of people doing very well off it in Japan. And globally now, there are people doing like mega well, and this is growing. This is on a curve. So and Benjamin Harris, when you're talking about Futurama, that's exactly the sort of problem with TV actually at the moment. And this is why maybe again, if they could get the gumption, perhaps this is the model that they could switch to. The thing is that TV shows are pre-ad funded, right? And if they don't get the funding from the advertisers, even if it's a good show, they don't get another series. But on YouTube, you have to put the product out there first and suck up the cost of doing it, unless you get sponsorship, which some people do, and you make the money later. Of course, it doesn't always have to go that way, but if you're making good content, then it will be sustainable, and that's what these guys here are doing, and they're killing it, and they're doing better than the TV studios by being confident in their product, and makers of Futurama, that's what they should, I think, consider anyway. So that was pretty cool. Eddie Jones, we just talked about Eddie Jones before, and why I think he's just an awesome coach. He's a right coach, and I had one opportunity once to talk with him for like 80 minutes while we were watching a club game together. I'd refereed the game before, and he actually gave me a very, very nice evaluation of my refereeing ability on the game that I'd done before. And we were just talking about everything about Japanese rugby in general, and this is before he became the national coach. And a lot of the stuff that we talked about I actually put into that blog, where I talked about rugby, Japanese rugby up where it should have been all along. So I talk about this, but very good to see the Japanese rugby team getting recognition, especially with the 2019 Rugby World Cup coming to Japan next. And Benjamin Harris, exactly right, exactly. Do I like Atsugiri Jason? You know what? I don't watch much TV anymore. I can't. I mean, I'm in here because we have to keep it quiet out in the living room because my son sleeps next to the living room. So I don't know. I don't actually watch Atsugiri Jason that much, so I can't really give an opinion on that. But anyway, this is the final episode 6, and thanks again to Fox Morris for making the awesome thumbnails for this. Someone should make a point that maybe the title was so convoluted, and that's why it didn't really get very good views, this series, which is a shame. Because I think the content of it, and if you're watching this is interesting content actually, and I think it did come out really well. And so maybe I'll consider that next time. I'll definitely do another thing like this the next time that he is in town. For me, it's just fascinating for me to watch back. These are really good conversations. And it happens to be with another New Zealander and a high school friend. But anyway, it's worth a look, and it's only 6 episodes, so go and check that out. I might even consider making it like a full length or something like that. But yeah, it came out really well anyway, and we got cut off at the end. But that is that. A bit of YouTube news that came out this week. They've changed the algorithm or the machine or whatever it is that picks thumbnails out from your video. They used to have a thing that it would just pick out like the middle slide in the video and 2 random and then they'd have it like randomly pick up the scenes. Of course, you could upload your own customized thumbnail, but the algorithm which would generate a thumbnail for your video was always determined basically just randomly based on timing within the video. And they changed that algorithm recently to actually look at the content of the video and look at where there's more action happening, which they found would generally indicate, like what the video subject was about more often. So they've developed a much more intelligent way of selecting appropriate, like random recommended thumbnails, which I have observed seems to be doing pretty well. It seems to be making good suggestions, like with my music videos. It's making suggestions when I've got the name of the song flashing up on the screen, and so it's a small thing, but it's a nice thing and a big thing. It does mean that you don't have to be necessarily, if you're in a rush, that you can get a pretty decent random thumbnail now, or at least get 3 decent choices to pick from. So that is a nice little change. One big thing that's been going on in the news this week, a little bit of Japan news. I haven't really talked much about politics or Japanese news this week, and I'll only do this one thing. UNESCO. So no country in the world probably loves UNESCO more than Japan. Japan contributes about 15% of its budget, and everyone who's been in Japan knows how Japan goes crazy for UNESCO World Heritage listings. Whether it's Mount Fuji, or whether it's the world's biggest taco, or whether it's some tree or whatever, to have UNESCO World Heritage listing status on anything, something that every local government in Japan tries to do, and it's a huge tourism business in Japan. There are tours based on going to UNESCO sites, so it's kind of a big deal. UNESCO, of course, is an organization. It doesn't just register certain like the most beautiful national parks in the world and stuff like that. It registers sort of cultural heritage and history and all this sort of stuff. And there's a recent initiative by UNESCO to create like a repository of the collective memory of humankind. And as part of that, China submitted a bunch of documents relating to comfort women in China and the Nanking massacre. And Japan complained during the submissions process that this should be something that Japan should have a say in, or be do collaboratively with China, and it shouldn't just be used by one country to kind of use politically to beat up on another country. It shouldn't be used as a tool for that. And apparently, in spite of that, UNESCO went ahead and recognized they turned down the comfort women part, but they recognized the Nanking massacre documents, which were contemporary documents explaining about the whole basis for the number of 200 to 300,000 dead that was used during the war crime tribunals that happened after World War II, and the records of those tribunals as well. And that's what they submitted, and UNESCO accepted those. The Japanese government reacted with outrage that UNESCO didn't take their opinion into consideration about the listing of these documents. They didn't say that they deny Nanking, but they said it's not a settled matter of history, which is kind of interesting because, at least in the Tokyo War Crime Tribunals, it was specifically, a matter which Japanese war criminals were convicted for, with those numbers that the Chinese are quoting. But however, the listing of that view of history is something that the Japanese government, without saying exactly what they objected to about the content, they just said it's basically that it's unacceptable by UNESCO, and the cabinet now has said repeatedly that they would consider freezing their funding of UNESCO, which is like 15% of their budget, which I agree to those who said that this is a childish overreaction and response. And the whole irony of this is that while China was doing that, talking about the bad things that Japan did during World War II, Japan also listed, as part of the collective memory thing, put in its own documents relating to the capturing of Japanese who were left behind on the Asian mainland and put into Siberian gulags by Stalin for up to 20 years. And the deportations eventually and the repatriations that happened up to 1965, 20 years after the war, from Siberia. And Russia came back and, almost like an internet troll, just basically word for word making the same complaints about Japan that Japan was making about China, with the same things. And it was just stupid. It was stupid. And that's where I've got the thing. So, at the same time as China was rejecting Japan's criticism of the UNESCO listing of Japan's war crimes, Japan rejects Russia's criticism of UNESCO listing of Russia's, stuff, which again, you talk about the Streisand effect. A bunch of news articles have gone out in the media all around the world, highly critical of Japan. Once again, Abe looking like he's trying to revise or deny, history. And the whole fact that they protested, if they'd said nothing about this wouldn't have been picked up by anyone, but the fact that the Japanese government protested against it is just terrible press for Japan. And this is why, I'm always telling them, just don't go there. You're not making it better by trying to fight back over this stuff, honestly. We're talking before about Tokyo Cheapo and some good guides that they have released recently. Here's one right now: prepaid and cheap data SIM card options in Japan. If you're traveling to Japan, you want to know about data SIMs, which most people in Japan, including myself, don't know about the options. They've got a list of the options for people who are coming in and want to have like cheap, easy mobile phone access. So that's pretty good information. The whole thing with Russia, which is kind of degenerated lately. Particularly around Japanese expectations that they would get the South Kuril Islands, as Japan calls it, the northeastern territories, back in whole or in part. Although these are islands which used to be, permanently occupied by Japanese residents who were deported to Siberia. It is now that those people were deported and replaced by Russian by colonists, more or less, who still live there. And, Russia's made it clear recently that, they can't have peace talks for a peace treaty between Russia and Japan without Japan accepting the factual reality that, Japan lost the war, and as a result it also lost those islands. That's the way that they see it. And there's going to be Putin, who's apparently a Japanophile, was looking forward to coming to Japan, negotiating a peace treaty and selling lots of gas to Japan, and Japan was ready to do all of that. But, Russia's been has been a bit preoccupied with its wars and whatnot lately, and it looks like Putin's going to call off the visit to Japan. So, just all sorts of stuff going on there. And there's an article here in Japanese which talks about something which you hear a lot about in rumor, but there's a lot of detail around this, from someone who used to work in the Pachinko company, Maruhan, who talks about the rumors that pretty much everyone in Japan knows that Maruhan and many of the Pachinko companies like it are basically owned by the North Korean, by pro-North Korean interests that have provided a lot of funding for the North Korean government and the regime there. And the person in this thing, who used to be a high up in this company, basically confirms those sort of rumors and adds a lot of information to it. So for me, it was fascinating to read this and to read the whole relationship between Pachinko and the North Korean regime, and why, in spite of the fact that Pachinko is an antisocial. I mean, it's a gambling with all the problems that you have with gambling addiction and so on. It's a vice, and yet at the same time, and it is dominated by a community that's been funding a regime that's hostile to Japan with the money from it, and yet how have they been allowed to exist? And it kind of explains the politics and everything around that. See you later, Ben. I'll be wrapping up soon, but anyway, that was pretty interesting. I found a video from a memory card I was cleaning up for something the other day, and it had a video that I shot in February 2011, just before the big quake, on like my Zacti phone when I first met Michaela, and PDR, and there's Tokyo Kuni and a bunch of people. I actually do have a video that I shot actually during the big earthquake in 2000 in March. The only problem was I shot it in the middle of my office, and so I don't think I could upload it. Plus, in the office that I was in, it didn't show a lot of shaking, and I decided right away, actually, no, I can't post a YouTube video from here. So I actually stopped recording kind of quickly, but I kind of found this, and it was kind of took me back a bit, so it was very nice to post that the other day. A couple final things. This little camera, which has been getting this light L16 camera, has been getting a lot of attention. What they say is by having 16 different lenses and sensors in this basically kind of a chunky smartphone kind of form factor, they say that they can reproduce basically a Canon 5D Mark III with 3' lenses, basically, in effect. I looked at all the materials for this and the photos that were shot with this, the sample photos, and I don't quite buy it. It's a cool idea. I think it's going too far to say that that's a Canon 5D. The photos are still grainy. It's basically like having a phone. It combines the images of 16 iPhone sensors, basically. But what it does is super cool, and I am going to look at this, and it might be something, that sort of thing that I would like to see spread, or that I might even want to buy when it comes out next year. Although I'm not sure I would be one of the people shelling out $1,300 to pre-order it now. But I love the idea of what this is, and as an astronomy geek, the idea of distributing lenses is something which makes a lot of sense, and something which happens, anyway in astronomy and radio astronomy. And it may, so the theories are sound. Although I'm really interested to see where this goes. It shoots 4K video. So yeah, I'm very much into this. It's nice to see something really revolutionary around this. And here's the video of Munemori Kawasaki actually telling NHK to go screw himself, bro. Which I loved. Oh, it's so good. You got to watch this. And I think that's it. And then we're up to the video for tonight. I haven't actually got a track prepared for tonight. But what I will do is I will show you on I've got some SoundCloud tracks that I put up recently, and go and check them out, because they are there for you guys to go use. And let me go to my profile.